Last time on the Race to Superintelligence.
This is a fascinating story we have for you of a senior Google engineer who says one of the company's artificial intelligence systems has become a sentient being and was thinking and reasoning like a human being.
Because AI models learn from our data, they can mirror some human behaviors quite well, both the good and bad. And any big advances stir up this debate about whether we've reached the finish line, a super intelligent machine that can multitask, think, and reason for itself. Like when an engineer inside Google claimed the company had built a sentient system.
Has Google's AI become sentient? A Google employee thinks so he went public with the conversations he had with it.
The engineer, Blake Lemoine, was typing on his laptop to Google's chatbot generator called Lambda. It mimics speech by having ingested trillions of words from the internet. As he talked to Lambda about religion, Lemoine, who studied cognitive and computer science in college, noticed the chatbot talking about its rights and personhood, and he decided to press further.
Google has a policy against creating sentient AI. And in fact, when I informed them that I think they had created sentient AI, they said, no, that's not possible. We have a policy against that.
The former chief scientist at OpenAI didn't go quite that far, but he did claim that AI systems are partially conscious.
And when you have really smart people who are close to the technology making those arguments, they can really mislead the average person who doesn't understand what's really going on.
This is part 2.
Artificial intelligence, a machine beyond the mind of man. It's science fiction, but is it also fact?
What do you think artificial intelligence is?
My favorite definition of artificial intelligence is just computers doing smart stuff.
If that sounds very broad, that's because it is. Intelligence is a squishy term.
If the human brain can solve all kinds of different tasks, can we build programs that can do the same thing?
There's no real reason to believe that humans are some sort of peak of intelligence.
How do you define what the brain does?
This is the Race to Superintelligence. I'm Jennifer Strong.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 US cities.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
The choice is yours. Obey me and live, or disobey and die.
There's a long history of sci-fi tropes about a robot apocalypse.
Frightening story of the day man built himself out of existence.
Or intelligent machines that might kill us all.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
72 million people dead? Is this a game, or is it real?
What's the difference?
Oh, wow.
And not just in film, either. Researchers have been exploring this topic, too, for as long as there's been AI research. Even the man known as the father of computer science, Alan Turing, warned us about this back in 1951, as the race towards superhuman AI was just getting started.
It seems probable that once the machine thinking method had started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. They would be able to converse with each other, to sharpen their wits. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control.
And lately, this list of people concerned that things might go very wrong with this work has expanded beyond Hollywood and universities to include people like the head of the Catholic Church, the Pope, who recently addressed a gathering of world leaders specifically about AI.
We would condemn humanity to a future without hope if we took away people's ability to make decisions about themselves and their lives by dooming them to depend on the choices of machines. We need to ensure and safeguard a space for proper human control over the choices made by artificial intelligence programs. Human dignity itself depends on it.
It's worth noting that the Pope himself has been the victim of a video deepfake. It went viral before people figured out it wasn't real. Now, he's joined a number of other public figures urging politicians to make sure that people remain in control of AI, and not the other way around.
What do you mean we don't know exactly how it works? It was designed by people.
No, it wasn't.
Geoffrey Hinton is one of the most important figures in the field, often referred to as the godfather of AI, and he announced that he'd quit his job at Google so he could speak more freely about his growing concerns.
What we did was we designed the learning algorithm. That's a bit like designing the principle of evolution.
This is him speaking on the television news program 60 Minutes.
But when this learning algorithm then interacts with data, it produces complicated neural networks that are good at doing things, but we don't really understand exactly how they do those things.
As a pioneer of deep learning, he'd developed some of AI's most fundamental techniques. But here, he's saying that even he doesn't know exactly how AI works, or, later on, how we might control the types of systems he expects to exist in the future.
What are the implications of these systems autonomously writing their own computer code and executing their own computer code?
That's a serious worry, right? So one of the ways in which these systems might escape control is by writing their own computer code to modify themselves. And that's something we need to seriously worry about.
What do you say to someone who might argue if the systems become malevolent, just turn them off?
They will be able to manipulate people, right? And these will be very good at convincing people because they'll have learned from all the novels that were ever written, all the books by Machiavelli, all the political connivances. They'll know all that stuff. They'll know how to do it.
Not long after Hinton left Google, more than 1,000 people, many of them also luminaries from the field, signed an open letter urging a pause in development of the most advanced AI systems.
We had this big statement, including the leaders of the major AI labs, 2 of the 3 godfathers of deep learning, folks like Bill Gates, and a long, long list of other people, where the statement said, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics or nuclear war. And so that seems like a big shift to me. So I'm Malo Borgo, and I'm the CEO of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, or MIRI for short. And how I'd summarize kind of our focus is that we work on increasing the probability that humanity can safely navigate the transition to a world with smarter than human AI.
It's a California nonprofit that's been studying these issues since the early 2000s. He's interested in the big existential questions about AI, like if companies succeed at building the superintelligent systems they say they're working on that can think and act independently and become smarter than humans, then what kind of testing or checks and balances would we need to have in place?
There's no real reason to believe that humans are some sort of peak of intelligence. And so if we expect that the field will be able to succeed at that, we should expect that, just like we see with AI systems, once they are able to reach human performance, often go on to vastly outperform humans at any task that they're good at, that we should see that across the board for these more general AI systems as they improve. And from our perspective, there's not a great track record of things that are less intelligent controlling things of greater intelligence. It's even a thing that people who were founding the field back in the 50s and 60s were already thinking about.
He expects we'd face a real challenge in anticipating just how such systems might behave, or why. And researchers are working to build tools that will help them better understand this. But in the process of doing so, they've already uncovered cases of people being tricked, including this one.
One of the organizations who's kind of at the forefront of building evaluations for these types of systems and helped OpenAI evaluate GPT-4 had a case where they were getting the system to try and do something on the internet, and it ran into a CAPTCHA. And CAPTCHAs are these things that, try and make sure that you're not a bot signing up for the website. So they might make you say which images have bicycles in it. And the AI system couldn't solve it itself, but had the ability to do things like reach out to a TaskRabbit.
A TaskRabbit worker is a freelancer who can help with everyday tasks, either online or in person.
And so it did that and asked the TaskRabbit to solve the CAPTCHA for it. And the TaskRabbit went, hey, this is a little suspicious. You're not like a bot or something.
Researchers set things up in a way so that they could see the system's reasoning. They did this so they'd be able to tell why the AI made some of its decisions.
And the AI system said something to the effect of, kind of in its own internal monologue, well, if I tell this person I'm a bot, they're not going to do the task that I want. And so what I'll do is tell them that I'm visually impaired, and so I can't solve CAPTCHAs. And so it told the TaskRabbit that, and then the TaskRabbit was like, oh, I'm sorry, here you go, and solved the CAPTCHA for the AI system. And so this in itself is a pretty minor innocuous behavior. But if we're imagining that these systems are going to become increasingly capable, increasingly autonomous, and in charge of much more significant things, if they continue to have these types of deceptive behaviors, that would be very concerning. The various AI labs have put out policies of varying strengths with what protocols they're going to put in place to test these systems. A certain set of evaluations that is already being discussed and implemented are for capabilities that AI systems might have that would be more prone to misuse risks, helping someone significantly develop a dangerous biological compound or, some sort of bioweapon or pathogen that could cause a pandemic. There's also people who are doing evaluations for things like whether an AI system has the capability to conduct autonomous cyber attacks, which is another capability that could be severely misused.
And being able to automate that type of work means that many more bad actors around the world will have the ability to cause a lot of disruption.
It's difficult to know whether we'll be able to evaluate systems and notice whether they have these capabilities in a way that's convincing before they actually have those capabilities, and it's risky. But I think a thing that governments could be doing here is stepping in, looking at best practice, looking at kind of the forefront of these evaluations, trying to commission better work here and put in place at least the best practice we have for now to make sure that anyone who's developing systems past a certain level of capability is doing evaluations for as many of the risks that we can run evaluations for as soon as possible.
Geoffrey Hinton's resignation from Google, followed by a letter asking for a pause on the most advanced AI research, signed by people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, all of it grabbed the world's attention. But for many working in the field, it was seen as a distraction from issues impacting lives right now, like the use of data taken from things as personal as our voices, our photos, and our communications, often without meaningful consent.
This morning, an AI warning from Hollywood. Actress Scarlett Johansson saying this voice used by OpenAI's virtual assistant Sky,
hello, I'm really excited about teaming up with you,
sounds, quote, eerily similar to her own.
Actress Scarlett Johansson is accusing the parent company of OpenAI of using a likeness of her voice without her permission.
Not only did she refuse a request from OpenAI to voice its new virtual assistant, she declined after the company's CEO approached her twice. Now she says the company reluctantly agreed to take the voice they called Sky down only after she hired legal counsel.
AI systems that generate words, art, and human-like voices require an incredible number of examples to learn those skills, most of them taken directly from the internet without consent. And it turns out, even the highest-paid woman in Hollywood might not be exempt from this.
In a statement, Johansson said the entire situation left her shocked, angered, and in disbelief. Let's take a listen together to this voice in question.
Hey, ChatGPT, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
It was meant to sound like a character Johansson played in a movie called Her, about a man who falls in love with an AI assistant.
How do you work?
Well, basically, I have intuition. I mean, the DNA of who I am is based on the millions of personalities of all the programmers who wrote me. But what makes me, me, is my ability to grow through my experiences. So basically, in every moment, I'm evolving, just like you.
But today's voice assistants are still a far cry from the hyper-intelligent machines we've been musing about for decades, and that companies are rushing to create. Part of what makes this so hard is that this technology is actually many technologies. Speech recognition is what allows something like Siri to recognize the sounds you make and transcribe them into words. Natural language processing turns those words into meaning and figures out what to say in response. And voice generation is the final piece, the human element, that gives it the ability to speak. Each of these skills is a huge challenge, and they haven't always been so easy to make. So we called up an expert whose voice might sound familiar.
Hi, I'm Susan C. Bennett, the original voice of Siri.
Though it wasn't the first time she'd given her voice to a machine.
In the late 70s, when they were introducing ATMs, I like to say it was my first experience as a machine. And, there were no personal computers or anything at that time. And people didn't trust machines. They wouldn't use the ATMs because they didn't trust the machines to give them the right money. If they put money in the machine, they were afraid they'd never see it again. And so a very enterprising advertising agency in Atlanta at the time called McDonald & Little decided to humanize the machine. So they wrote a jingle, and I became the voice of Tilly, the all-time teller. And then they ultimately put a little face on the machine.
Susan Bennett has done voice work for companies like McDonald's and Delta Airlines for decades. And years before Siri came out, she did a strange series of recordings that would go on to fuel its development.
In 2005, we couldn't have imagined something like Siri or Alexa. And so all of us, I've talked to other people who've had the same experience, who have been a virtual voice. We just thought we were doing just generic phone voice messaging. And so when suddenly Siri appeared in 2011, it's like, I'm who? What is this? So it was a genuine surprise. But I like to think of it as we were just on the cutting edge of this new technology. So, I choose to think of it as a very positive thing, even though none of us were ever paid for the millions and millions of phones that our voices are heard on. So that's a downside.
She says Apple never acknowledged her as the American voice of Siri.
The only actual acknowledgement that I've ever had is via Siri. If you ask Siri, who is Susan Bennett, she'll say, I'm the original voice of Siri. Thanks so much, Siri. Appreciate it. The day that Siri appeared, a fellow voice actor emailed me and said, hey, we're playing around with this new iPhone app. Isn't this you? And I said, what? I went on the Apple site and listened, and yep, that was my voice. It was an adjustment at first, as you can imagine, because I wasn't expecting it. It was a little creepy at first, I'll have to say. I never really did a lot of talking to myself as Siri, but gradually I got accepting of it, and actually it ended up turning into something really positive.
In that way, her situation kind of echoes what's happening to the rest of us now. The photos and artwork we post can be used to train AI models, and many of the software tools that artists use, those now have terms of service that let companies use that work to make AI systems better. So in the future, we might see images we love without knowing they were inspired by artists or photographers we admire. This erosion of trust, privacy, and consent, it's among the more worrisome consequences of the current AI boom, and potentially one of the hardest to track or put a stop to, especially for data generated by regular people. Coming up, it takes 10 times more electricity to ask an AI system like ChatGPT to respond to one of your questions than it takes to do a Google search. So, as engineers look to make AI faster and better, they're going to need a bigger share of the world's resources.
Support for the race for superintelligence comes from the Pulitzer Center's AI Accountability Network, supporting and bringing together journalists reporting on AI and with AI globally.
The Race to Superintelligence is created and produced by me, with Emma Silikins, Daniela Hernandez, and Meg Marco, with additional research and production assistance from Sonia Gerwit, Neve McAuliffe, Anthony Green, and Luke Robert Mason. The show is mixed by Garrett Lang with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.